All right, good evening, everybody. Today, welcome to day 8 of Intro to Coding Live. Today is our second mini project, and we'll be building a Powerball lottery simulator. Um, there's a bunch of information here, kind of giving you an idea what the Powerball lottery drawing is. If you're unfamiliar with it, you can you can even pull up some of the information. I went to the New York Powerball lottery site. I mean, it's all accurate, all good information, and it's all basically what we're building our project based on. Um, you can use the Jupyter notebooks if you want to inside the code space. Um, you can also use a practice PY, or if it works even better for you, you can create a new file and name it Lotto or whatever makes sense to you if you want to keep your practice stuff separate from this particular project. Yeah, mine I've been deleting a lot of stuff from, but you might want to keep notes on your stuff. But yeah, just like before, you can hit this icon for new file and just name it. Make sure you give it a .py and you're off and running. So the Powerball lottery is a lottery drawing. Pretty sure we've all at least heard of it. The odds of winning the jackpot is 1 in 292.2 million. Um, Tickets are $2 per play. There's two series of balls that you're picking for your numbers from. They're the white set of balls is numbered 1 to 69, and you select 5 of those. And then the Powerball, which is a red ball, is numbered 1 to 26, and you pick one of those. Now, there's no duplicates in any of these numbers, so you can't pick the same number twice or any of that any of that stuff. Any questions? We have the prizes breakdown here. So there's different levels of how your matches equal up with the prizes. For the particular project, for the little mini project that we're going to do, we're not going to worry about any of these extended parts of the Powerball pricing system. Is This is more than enough. I do have the information on how the jackpot is calculated. That starts oh that starts at 20 million, and for every drawing that the jackpot is not hit, they add 10 million to it, I believe. Yeah. So we'll depending on time, we'll see if we can simulate that. Um, or we could just go with, you know, a very simple ticket tracking type of system. So when we're looking at this project, um, can anybody tell me some of the data structures or tools from our toolbox that you think we might be able to use here? Okay. So um I know we've covered a few different collections. Yep, Dom said we could use a list. That's one option that we've got. Um, so we could use a list of numbers if we want to. Um, yes, Marcel is identifying we could use for loops in here. We'll probably have to use a maybe a few of them depending on what we're trying to do. Stuff like comparing our whether we won or not, and that sort of stuff. Um, a three-dimensional list, is that what you're suggesting, Dominic or Dom? A 2D list? Um, you could do it that way, or you could use another data structure that might make it a little bit easier to read if you're looking at it that way. Yeah, for white ball, red ball, you could do a two-dimensional list. You could also use a dictionary to track that, because remember we can place other data types in the as values to the dictionary. Um, Now there is something that we are going to kind of quickly cover, and we're going to definitely need some sort of randomization, right? And I believe we have not really, we might have mentioned it, but I don't think we really talked about it in detail. So we'll cover a bit about how we import a library, because the random functionality is not inherently built into what we're using in Python, but there is a random module that we can import and get additional functionality. And what modules or libraries are is this is code that somebody else has written, and they've decided to package it up and distribute it so other people can use it. Stuff like random functions can be useful in a lot of different situations. I have the official Python docs right here. I'll pop that in there. I know we mentioned using the W3 schools, so we can pop that in here as well. Well, those are two different places where you can look at um, some of the features that we have with the random module. Any questions so far? Now, while we're thinking through this, I know I showed you the IPO chart, and I believe I've talked about trying to kind of document your thought process before really thinking about too much code. Um, so anybody give me an indication of which way they'd want to see this kind of thought process, where we'll work through a few pieces, and then we'll break out into two breakout rooms like we did on Monday, so you're to work on a couple pieces of it. We're not going to cover the entire concept and then everybody goes and works until we're done. We're just going to try to take this in phases. Um,
I think the best bet to start is probably going to be a dictionary
well,
to,
for mapping out our thought process, what I'm asking is, we can also, one other method to do it is just cover it in comments. Like, we could do it this way, or we could try to map it out in the IPO process. Which one would you guys prefer to see?
probably this.
This right here? Okay. And the key aspect is I'm trying not to think too much about code right now. The comment process. Okay. Um, so let's look here. So we could come up with let's look at our high level tasks, right? So if we look at our high level tasks, we know that we need a lottery ticket, right?
Yeah.
So we need some sort of data structure or something to generate the ticket, right?
Hmm.
So we generate the winning ticket, right? We need to do that. And there's another functionality that I know we haven't covered. We will cover getting text input in here too. But there's two ways that a player can get a ticket. You can pick the numbers yourself, or you can have the computer pick them.
Yeah,
And
random
yeah,
or
yeah. So
everything.
so we need to be able to generate a player ticket. We could say auto generate or manual input. Okay. So what else do we need to do? Now we got the tickets.
Random number generation.
Well, we've that's deep diving into
Oh,
these two
okay.
things.
So auto
So
generate.
now that we've got the tickets, what's the next? Yes, Marcellus, we've gotta figure out the prize, right? So compare or determine the prize, determine if they're a winner, and then maybe determine prize. As we go through it, we'll figure out if we want to break that into two processes or if that wraps up nice and neatly inside here. So you're talking about inside the generated winning ticket. Derek, you mentioned that we need some sort of way to get a random number, right?
Yeah.
What's the key thing we have to keep in mind about these random numbers to be able to simulate the lotto game correctly?
It can only be, I know what I'm thinking. I just don't know how to say it. So it can only be like one grouping of random numbers.
So are you, I see Marcella says they have to be within parameters. Is that what you're saying, or are you
Yeah,
going a different
basically, like
direction?
you can only
Okay.
call for like one set of random numbers for that specific ticket, and then obviously you can't call for it like again for that ticket.
Right. And just like Dominic was saying, you
Yeah, it
can't
can't
duplicate
duplicate.
numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
what
these
I'm
are
trying to say.
that's why we're going through this process here is we're trying to was that 1 through 26. There we go. Sorry. Is we're getting these are the hard like these are the program requirements. No duplicates. And for these numbers, these are the white ones, right? And we need 5 of them.
And 26 red.
And this is the red, and there's only one Powerball. Okay. So we'll have a total of 6 numbers here. We get one red Powerball and we get 5 white balls. And that's how, let me pull up the pricing. Where did we go here? You see how the Powerball, this is our red ball, the black ball in here. So those can change how our prize is distributed. Now, this is something we can note inside our prizes. We have a few duplicate prize amounts here. So, what can we use to kind of mitigate that? It's stuff that we covered when we were going over a comparison. There were some other pieces that can kind of help us out here. Anybody remember? If else, so yes, Marcellus, the if else, that can cover the whole process. But inside that if else, if I have 2 of them that award
Or
100,
confuse it.
well, there's a way we can kind of make we can handle that and kind of think to yourself, you've got these 2 prizes and these 2 results. So one or the other get you the same prize. So that's where I'm getting at is as this is a place where we can use that or to combine 2
I want to say like a Boolean statement to like true if like the Powerball is bought and like No, that wouldn't work though.
You're you are on the right track though. Your terminology is right. That's what the or is we're making a more complicated it's a little more complicated because if we match four white balls or three white balls and one red ball,
Yeah.
we go through here. That's where I was getting at.
That's like where my head's at, but the terminology for me is off, like you said. Like it's basically like I don't know what the terminology would be, but it's like if
So
you purchase three white balls and a Powerball, then that would be your jackpot. Or if you purchase three white balls, then
that's four white balls, yeah.
oh
Okay.
yeah, four.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So if you match, these are our matches. If you match four white balls
Yeah,
to the tie, yeah. But the way you talked about it right there is the same way. This stuff right here, these comments, put those in plain English to help you remember.
yeah.
So we can use or. Does that help? Use or with if statements to combine same prizes, or do you think there's a better way we can make a good mental trigger to be able to know what we're talking about here?
I think or if is gonna like there probably is a simpler way, or if would work though, but I think you're gonna end up typing out more than what's necessary.
Yeah, as long as this is good enough and catches can it's these are kind of like little reminders that as we're working through the things like okay, this is what I need to do now. Because remember, we can get into that stage where we've got blinders on, so it's good to be able to start commenting out what we need to do before we're actually starting to write code. Um, we want some sort of output, right?
Yeah.
We need to output if winner and prize, right? So inside the inside the generate player ticket, um, if we do it if we do it right, we might be able to use the same functionality to generate the winning ticket to auto generate the player ticket, right? Start reusing some of that stuff. So maybe we might what would we do with that logic to generate your winning ticket?
Auto generate like winning numbers.
Yeah, if it does the same thing, what kind of thing did we learn about that we could kind of reuse that stuff without having to type it a second time? Do you remember?
Like a function.
Yes, functions. And then naturally for the manual input, we've got to get manual input from user. What do we have to do with that manual input? Because what kind of stuff can you type in when you're given a prompt?
So they could type in strings or integers. Um, I guess
So
it wouldn't be floats in this situation, but
yeah, they could type in the word apple. So we got to make sure we got to validate that it's numeric, right? So one thing and Marcellus is covering it right now, or he mentioned it in chat. One thing that because we didn't cover getting input from users, all input taken from the console is always a string, no matter if it's numeric or a letter. So as Marcellus said, we need to format it into an int. So we'll have to typecast input, which is a string, into int. What else do we have to do with the input we're getting from the user? We kind of covered it up here.
Decide if they want a Powerball or not.
Well, yeah, we could. Well,
Well,
the
if
way
they're
the
choosing a
ticket is, you
Powerball or
always select a Powerball.
not. Okay.
But what's the other pieces we've got in? What's the criteria we have for the white and red balls? So if they enter a number that's 200,
I'm just trying to track along the best I can, honestly.
no
This,
worries.
yeah.
Well, I'm looking for the low hanging fruit here is we need to make sure, yes, that Dominic's right. We have to split the white and red balls, which we can do that by prompting, but we have to also enforce the same numeric limitations. So we need to make sure that the user's not entering any duplicates and their numbers within our ranges, right? Numeric limitations, yes, that's broad enough to cover both of the requirements that we're looking at here. That it's one for white balls, that's 1 through 69, and there's no duplicates. So yeah. Okay, so what we're gonna do is everybody's got the pages that I shared, right? For the random numbers. So the first thing I think we should work on is trying to generate the winning ticket. Okay. No problem. I'll send these again for everybody. There's two versions here. There are two different pages here, and I'm going to show you the reason why I'm giving you two in a minute here. Now, we'll start with the easier to read one really quick. From this list, I know we can really kind of figure out that that might be one of the methods we're looking for, this rand int. Now, this gives you a single line to describe what the purpose is, and
Wouldn't we use the one above it? Because if we have a limitations on numbers, return a random number between the given range.
okay. So both of these functions do that.
Oh,
Both,
okay. I didn't.
but we need an int.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where I'm showing you the difference between the two sets of documentation. This doesn't, other than the int keyword here, and if we open it up, we can dive deeper and
So
see
end result needs to be an int, like even though
we
like for
want
the
an
manual
int.
one, okay.
Yeah.
So because where my head went was like for manual input, it's obviously going to be a string, so I would have thought to use like the one above.
Yes, and we can also see that you were pointed out rand range. This is an alias for rand range, but it's more clear to what we're looking for. And what we're looking, there's key things we need to pull out from this, and that's covered in our parameters here. We know that we have a start and a stop, but this stop is inclusive. So that means it includes the number that we want to stop at. So if we put 1 to 69, that'll give us numbers 1 through 69. Whereas if we look at the way this rand range is, we would have to put 1 to 70. So randint, and randint's a pretty popular random function. But many times people hit the documentation, they find one thing that looks like that's what I need, and they stop there. Okay. And so having a random number isn't the only numeric requirement we have, right? What were the other requirements again? It can't be duplicated. So a random number that can't be duplicated sounds like a pretty common enough thing that maybe somebody built something for that. What I'm getting at is, do you see this method here? It seems kind of vague, but there's a random sample method. And yes, Josh, you are on the right path. What is a sample? The way that they define a sample in here is it takes from the list you give it, the criteria you give it, and as it pops out a value, it returns it and it removes it from, it creates a copy in memory of this list and it starts removing the elements so they do not get duplicated. So this kind of likes, this is like dealing cards from a deck. You know, you have 52 cards in your traditional poker deck. When you discard a card or you draw a card, that is no longer in that deck. So this might be something that would work a lot better for us in part of the situation. I'm trying not to completely give you guys the answer, but yes, you can do it all with the randint, but I'm advising you to take a look at this too, because it can help you with solving that problem of checking for duplicates, because it's built into this function. So why not pass off that functionality to something that somebody else is maintaining? Any questions there? Comments? Is that clear, or do you need me to explain it a little bit better, or what do you think? You'll understand if you try printing the information out. And you're a little confused. Okay, good. Or sorry about that. Let me pop open this little practice.py here. So the first part of what we're looking at is we need to import random. I'm gonna show you via code to help drive it home. You see how import gets highlighted in purple? Random, it's recognizing it. So if I go help random now and run this, I now get all of the documentation, the in Python documentation for random. Okay. So importing is as simple as that when it's still part of the standard library. The random is still packaged up with Python. So all you really have to do in this case is import random. And if we want a random number, we can go random dot that rand int, and we remember that was a start and a stop. So if we did a 1 through 69 and then print my random. And if we run that, we get 17. We run it again, we get 61. We run it again, we get 37. Okay, so that's how the randint works. That gives us a single random number whenever we run it. Any questions there? Okay.
I'm sure you're
So,
probably going to go on to it next, but like now that we're using rand int to just like randomly generate obviously an integer, how would we group multiple integers into the list that we need for a ticket?
okay, that's what we're going to go through right now. Um, Dominic says you could loop this. So, and yes, you could build a loop to be able to loop through and get random integers. But if we ran into a duplicate number or a number that was already in our list, we'd have to run the loop again. While it's unlikely, the more numbers we put on our list, the more likely we're going to get duplicate numbers, which we have to put in a check to run it again if we already have that number in our list. But if we do a sample, I'm going to pull up the documentation really quick so you can see where I'm getting this from. So the random sample takes a list, and that's your master list that you're going to be pulling everything in, or your main list. And then this next piece is an optional piece where you specify how many values you want from that list. Dominic, I understand that you built a range of numbers. You don't really need to do that, okay? And I'm going to show you why right here. We don't need to build we don't need to build a we don't need to build a list to keep track of how many what our actual balls are. That's actually done just right here. So we don't really need to name it, if that makes sense. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this out so you can see the result of this. Now, do you see my list? Yes, you can give it a range instead of defining the list as a variable, you could just give it the range. If you think back to how we go through for loops, it's the same method there. We're just using the range keyword in a different style. Kind of so that you know that you can use the range as a keyword, you can use it in other places. Does that make sense? So if we wanted to, we could put 53 in here. And now we have numeric values that we could map out to different card values or something like that. You see how that just quickly turned into a deck of cards. So this is where you kind of think about your process through it and then look at what the tools you have available. Do you do you see what I mean, Derek? Or
Yes, basically see what's going on. You're randomly generating a number between obviously index 0 to 53, and then it's five numbers that are randomly generated.
yep, and the great thing about by putting it into the sample method, it can't duplicate them. So instead of putting all of that if logic in to check for duplicates, there's already a method that does that for us.
Gotcha.
So it's
It makes sense.
it's it's easier to use the tools that are available. And what it took was spending a few more minutes on the page to see what else is there in here.
Yeah, instead of like going with the first one that you thought was best.
And it's a typical it's not wrong. You can do it. All right. But sometimes like the instance with this sample case is sometimes you can stop and think about what you're trying to do and sometimes just stop and ask, is this something that would be useful in lots of different places?
Yeah. Because
If you can answer that as yes, then there's chances that it's included in a
so
library
correct me if
somewhere.
I'm wrong. If we would have used the first one, which I think was the range int one,
The
would that
randint.
yeah, would that have basically created a logic error since we were like trying to obviously randomly generate numbers but not duplicate those numbers? Would if that's what we would have initially or okay.
So I'm going to show you what this looks like. I think I know where you're going. I'm going to show you what this looks like done the other way. They function the same. Okay. So we have my list 2 equals, we'll call that an empty list. And now what we're going to do is while length of my list 2 is less than 5, we want random number to equal random dot rand int 1 to 69. But now we have to go if rand num not in my list 2, my list 2 dot append rand num. Okay. And now if we print my list 2, we will still get, oops, there, syntax errors. We still get a list with non-repeating numbers, right?
Yeah, it's just cleaner the original way.
But the the functionality of this is really, really universal. So this is something, and I learned this on my own on a different project. That's why I'm kind of bringing this idea to you guys that this, if you can ask yourself, like, wait, this sounds like I could use this in a lot of different places. If there is no library out there for you, what I used to do was take these pieces and have my own personal library that I knew I built it before. And if I have to use that again, I just do the import thing, my own personal library, and pull the stuff that I already used.
Is the import function part of what I was doing on Monday where it's the regular
Yes,
okay.
yes. And it was importing the regular expression module to be able to give you the extended functionality of regular expressions.
Yeah, so it was importing
It was
I think
importing a
reg
module.
dot reg
RE. It was just RE.
uh,
Yeah. So, but that's what this is doing is now, and you could see there's this random, this highlighted in green. It shows that you're using from that random module and you're adding more functionality to your code. Oh, wow. We are at, it is 6:50 right now. I'm going to pause record. All right. So we have our breakout rooms set up. Once I open those, you guys will be able to go through and try to hash out how you want to solve just this problem right here. This is the first step that we're going to do. effective. We want to implement some sort of data structure to track the winning ticket and get our random numbers for both our 5 white balls and our 1 red ball. Okay. I'm going to open the rooms now, and I'll give you about 10, 15 minutes. I will be hopping in. So if you got questions, just shout them out. All right. Rooms are opening now. All right. So I saw everybody working on the logic to generate the winning ticket. Was there any comments? Anybody have anything to share about what they learned there? I'm going to add the import random here.
Learn there's many ways to do it.
Yes. There's several different ways that we can do this. So just because your solution's different doesn't mean it's wrong. So sometimes sometimes that's one of the great things about software engineering. You can work at a solution, put a lot of effort into it. I actually had this example happen to me earlier today where you've got nested loops, all the stuff's working right, you get all the right data, it passes all the tests, submit the challenge, and then see somebody accomplish it in 1 line. So I've been there. Okay, so I'm going to kind of talk through this while we're while I'm coding here. Pretty much, I think everybody was running with pretty much similar answers. I think both rooms had a pretty similar solution to this, right? So we defined our function. Now we're going to use, okay, so we have our list here. So let's see. I'm going to do a little bit of renaming right here really quick. And we remember range was exclusive, and we want 5. And we can print our white balls to be able to verify that we're getting our answer here. Okay. And now we have the logic for our red ball, which we can use the rand int that we were talking about. Okay, so, and now we have that ball. So I see we do have our example of printing inside of the function, but now that we're looking at this, how reusable is this right now? What's the one thing we need to do to our function to make it so that we can reuse this instead of right now it is doing the functionality that we want, but it's printing our output out, and as soon as we get to this line right here, it's gone. Because remember, if you remember, we were talking about
Oh, the return was it?
function scope. Yes, yes, return. We want something, we want to get something back out of it. So we've got two variables here that we're dealing with, right? We've got a list and we've got a list of integers and we've got an integer. There's a few different ways we can pass this back. There's a few different things we can do here. The different collections we've talked about have been lists, tuples, um, sets, and dictionaries, right? So what sounds like what sounds like a good way that we can pass these out into a structure that's going to be easy for us to manipulate down the road?
Would it be a list? Because you can actually change a list.
We could do that. We could pull out a list, but how? So we're thinking, are you thinking more like a list looking like this? I'm going to put numbers in here so we have an example of what it looks like. Something like that. So your first element, your white balls, is one list. And your second element is just an integer by itself. So we could do that. If we pass it out as a tuple, remember tuples are immutable, which isn't a big problem. Dominic, I see you're talking about you could put a /r to split it. What could you elaborate? I'm not sure where you're going with that. When it prints, yes, you can, and I think the character you're looking for is the /n, the new line, right? Um, that's great for printing it, but we need to compare, right? So we can go about this way. So if we return a list with white balls, and then we're going to be calculating the winner. That's down in here. So we're just working on step one of generating our winning ticket. So red ball. So now we can put our winning ticket equals generate ticket and print out our output down here. Let me comment out these lines so that we've got clean output. Does that look good for everybody? We want to roll forward with this. Thumbs up, thumb down. I see one thumb up. All right. Okay, so Josh, the brackets are because that's what we decided how to pass our result. These are our ticket numbers. That's how we decided to pass them back out to winning ticket. Is our first element of the winning ticket is the list of white balls, and our second element is the red ball. Now, I know somebody mentioned sorting the list, making it look a little prettier. So we could always go and add the sorted keyword to this. And now our numbers are easier for us to, I see there. No, there was another. There we go. Let me check my syntax here. There we go. That's probably what you were looking for, Josh. The reason why I'm used to using parentheses after a return statement, so I just inadvertently just put that in there. What it turned into was a tuple. So that's why that's why it looked weird. And that was actually a good check or a good catch, because the indication is seeing the parentheses out here is telling us that we have a tuple now, and we don't want a tuple. We want to be able to, we don't need to put a tuple inside a list. We could use a tuple here, but that just seems like additional complexity that we just don't need to worry about right now. Everybody agree? Okay. So we have our generate ticket. We've got our winning ticket. So we have this step 2 here where we want to get the stuff from the player. We want to get the info from the player. So we can start by generating a ticket again. So we could use the same logic to generate our ticket this way if we want to. But I think we're on a good roll with using the generate ticket as a function. So I think everything that has to do with creating a player ticket should be its own function as well. So if we go def generate player ticket, this pass is a stub. This just means that the generate player ticket does nothing right now, and it won't cause errors if we just try running the program. We don't run into issues here. So we're gonna kind of caveat a little bit here, and I'm gonna cover getting user input. I know we didn't cover this earlier, so getting user input there's an easy function for that. We can go input. All right, this function by itself, if I run it, you'll notice down here, there's a cursor. It's waiting for me to do something. Right now, we're not doing anything with it. So if I want to get user input, I could go like user selection equals input, and inside here, this works very similar to the print. We could throw a question here, and what we're going to just do is print user selection. Now, if we run this and I type yes, I get yes. But if I type 1, I get 1. So whatever I put into this input, it's going to give it back to me. But also, one thing we want to make sure that we cover is regardless of what we put in, if I put a 1 in here, our type is a string. So we have to keep that in mind when we get user input, we're dealing with a string. Any questions on the input? Okay. I don't see any questions. Um, so we could take probably 20 or 30 minutes if you want. If unless we have questions to be able to kind of help us think about how we want to accomplish this stuff. We're going to see how far we can get with the generate player ticket. Now, one thing I want you to notice, I'm handling my output. I'm handling my input outside of my functions and then calling that stuff based on what I'm doing here. That could easily be put into a function because you can have functions call other functions. Like this is what we're doing with the sample, the sorted and everything. So if you create your own functions, you could have like a function that says get player input, and then it could reference if they wanted a random generated ticket or something, you could point it that way. So there's lots of different decisions you can make on how you want this to kind of roll out. So I definitely suggest kind of looking at it and thinking how you'd want to approach it, maybe match it up with things that you've seen or done before. And yeah, that should be helpful. I'm going to copy this stuff in here. Does anybody need, I believe we have some good working examples. I'm going to copy this as well because this is a little bit modified from what I was seeing earlier, but it's still moving along what I believe was the same path as what we were doing. And I'm going to, so we're going to recreate the breakout rooms. They're going to assign automatically. We lost somebody, so now the breakout rooms are evenly divided 3 and 3. I'll pause the recording and we'll see about shooting to come back at 7, and then we'll kick into a break and then talk about what we got going on here. All right, so I was watching the way both rooms were working through their ways of getting their input, and I did see some good ideas about validating your input while um, you're getting it, so that people don't just enter in goofy numbers and anything that we're not expecting. So I went through and this is a little bit different than how we have covered it so far today and everything, but we've got about 30 minutes left, so I'm going to kind of scoot through this and we'll talk through the generate user ticket, and then we'll all work on trying to compare the results for seeing if we have a winner. All right. Let's see here. So in this example, we start with generating the ticket. Everybody else all the rooms were doing that. We did get ourselves some we did get ourselves our tickets based on the data structures we were trying to use. This example I was just quickly putting together instead of using a list of lists. I used a dictionary to be able to just reference. This was the way that just kind of made sense to me when I was kind of tinkering with this a little bit earlier. So as we see, we got our ticket, and then we have our automated generation of ticket. What I did was um the reason why I went with this route was because I was planning on getting the user input outside of the generate user ticket. Now, this is just a design decision, so it's all in how you decide to do it. I did it for this particular example because I shot through two different ways of getting an automated ticket and then going through and getting the inputted ticket. So one thing that I see that we were kind of having a little bit of wrapping our minds around was validating our input and everything. So I know the example that I used asked a question, and this is one way we can do it. We can have it say yes or no. Um, in this particular example, I would implement that like this. Generate user ticket. I'm just calling the functions here. And because of the way that I defined this using a bool, I put all of the logic of prompting the user for the individual ticket stuff inside my generate user ticket method. That was just what made sense to me, where to put the logic so I knew where to look when I had an issue. And then we're going to put an else here. Generate user ticket with false. And then we can print our ticket. So the logic here that I went through is when we come in to the generate user ticket, I used a dictionary to track the ticket. So I started out with an empty dummy ticket. My white is a list and my red is a single integer. So I prep this up because I know I'm going to need to use it inside my loops here. So if user select is true, that's what this says right here. You can do is true, but that's actually kind of redundant. So in this case, if you just put is user select, and that's why I went with the bool, it's really simple. It's yes or no, true or false. So that's where I went with that one. If it's true, then we go through the prompting process. And what I use for my counter is the length of the array or list inside of the white key here. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions?
Can you break that part down?
This part right here?
The part you were just talking about. Yeah. So what are you doing there?
Okay, so when I come into the function, the first thing I do is I create this ticket dictionary variable, right? And I give it two keys, white and red for my balls, right? Which matches the way that I did the generate ticket, right? Does that make sense? Good.
Yeah.
Okay. I start this with an empty list so that when I get into my while loop, I can call a length on it and it will pull the length of the list, which length of an empty list is 0, right? So when we first come into this loop, this variable, this length variable is 0, which is less than 5. And then we start moving into our input. Okay, so if we don't have, if our length, if our list doesn't have 5 elements, then we still need to select white balls. So I do the prompt, and this is just for semantics. All it does is it gives you the ball number that you're selecting to be able to help make it a little more readable.
So that first line, I'm sorry to interrupt. That
No
first
worries.
line is essentially allowing you to check whether or not they gave you a correct input.
No, the correct, I haven't gotten the input yet, or I haven't validated the input yet. That's
What I
what the
mean
if
is,
is here. This is the validation of the input.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a combined if statement. So if I break this up into parentheses, this might make it a little easier for you to read. So the validation part is where we start getting a little tricky. Now I've seen a few different ways to do this. You can check if your number is greater than 0 or less than 70. But instead I'm using the range. And remember, we've got num is our singular input. We're only getting one number here. This is not a full list. This is a single input. So I'm converting that number to see if it is inside this range. And I'm also checking to make sure I don't already have that number in my list. Does that make sense? I can run this. Oh, we are running it. So if I type apple here, I cause a problem because I didn't check for that. I just instantly type check. I just instantly tried to typecast. So there are issues with it. But oh, maybe it was, yeah. So that I haven't put anything in. But if I go and I pick my numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, do you see how this is increasing because it's accepting the input, right?
Yeah,
It's
I'm following.
accepting because it's passing both of these. Let me just put a number in here. And now I have a ticket. But if I go through and I generate a ticket and I do 1 and then I hit 1 again, I am capturing that. Okay. So that's what that's doing. It does need to be fixed because, I mean, what should probably happen here is, well, we can fix that right here. If num dot is numeric and now if we chain that like that, now if we run it and I've typed yes and apple, now it catches it. I believe, I know I saw somebody starting to work with this piece right here. Now I do understand this is chaining a lot of things here. But this is just like if I put if is numeric and then next line, if int num is in the range, and then next line, if int num not in ticket white, then to add it. So this is just effectively, it's taking three if statements and grouping them together by adding that and keyword to be able to qualify all the logic into one piece, because everything from this needs to be true for us to actually add the number. Does that make sense for everybody? Any questions there? And then the red ball should also have an is numeric. That way we can't put apple into red. I know that was quick and dirty, but with our lists, the way that we were doing them, being that I'm using the dictionary here, pretty much one of the only differences, if we were using the list of lists, we would go, I'm just going to say it's called ticket. We would access our first list and then append. Do you guys see that? Now, Dominic, I see you said mostly. I missed that. What part were you referring to? Is it the complex if statement? It is, yeah. And I can break out if one comma 70. This is the same as saying if num is greater than 0 and num is less than 70. It's the same thing right there. But in this particular case, because I was already chaining ands, I didn't want to chain another and to check each individual one. Because I agree, this is a little bit tough to read, and you have to look at it a bit to make sure you can sort out what's going on. When you're starting, and if getting used to the ands and ors is getting a bit tricky, then you can chain it all out into multiple if statements and get the same result. And that way, this particular line would just sit inside this if statement. And if anything else failed out, it would drop out. The other thing you would have to keep in mind is if you broke out these other if statements, you would also have to add multiple else statements. There's pros and cons to that. So if we did do that, we could say if it failed this is numeric, this could say that is not a number. So, or please enter a number. if it failed this one, which would be this one right here, we could say, please enter a number between 1 and 69 or between 1 and 70 or whatnot. And then for this one, you could say, hey, you already have that number. Please choose a new number. You can customize your error messages if that's the choice you want to go with. The red number is, yeah, effectively the while loops are used to be able to keep it running until you have all good, keep the loop running until you have all good input. Generally, when you're dealing with user input, you usually use while loops because you don't know, especially if you're adding in validation, you don't know how many times they're going to go through the loop. So you want to set some kind of measure of when we have the right input. In this particular case, it's when we have 5 elements inside our white balls for our ticket. Any questions there? And I definitely recommend trying it out, continuing with what you guys have on your own to be able to try to that get that validation in there so that we know that we're getting good input. And like mine, can you ask for input in a string method? Can you explain that a little bit?
I'm just wondering, I'm still trying to figure out this, the way I was doing it versus putting it in the input in the generation. Um, if I'm checking to see if something is numeric,
Mm-hmm.
can I also within the same line ask for the input that it's checking? Or does it have
Um,
to be underneath like
you have to get the input before you can check if it's numeric.
okay, and I can't do
Yeah.
that all in the same line.
No, and if you could, I wouldn't trust it. You know
I
what I mean?
got you.
Because it can cause this right here is about as complicated as I like to try to do things, and I honestly try to avoid doing this stuff when I can because this is complicated. And if something goes wrong, like I forgot to check if that could actually be converted before I just started converting it. Um, it's trying. The more complicated stuff is, the harder it is to figure out what caused the problem, right?
Yeah, I got
And there's when it's a syntax error or something like that, it's easier. But when it's a logic error, then the difficulty starts exponentially growing. Do you know what I mean? Because now it's not syntactically wrong. You have to start peeling apart the pieces to figure out where it's actually failing or where it's not doing what you expect it to do. That's what I mean there because it's not actually failing. It's just not doing what you designed it to. Um, okay. So the third step of what we would do is we have our winning ticket and our player ticket, right? So now what we need to do is we need to check and see if we have a winner. Or if we have matches. So I believe there is okay, there was something else. Because I sorted these, I want to add a sort here. So if I go ticket white dot sort, we'll see what that proves. Let me put this pass back in here. Because I sorted the other ticket, so I want to. There we go. Just so it matches the other input. That's more for aesthetics than anything else. It can still compare everything for everything for whether it's sorted or not. So okay, so the next step that we need to do is we need to compare our tickets for matches. So we can go, we can use the one example. What structures could we use that could help give us the types of matches that we're looking for? So in this example, if we're looking at our list here, we have two different types of matches, right? Everybody tracking? And let me know if you want me to back up, because we could back up and we could also, we could actually push into this. We could take this piece and move it into tomorrow if that works better for you guys too, if you're feeling overwhelmed right now. Thumbs up? Yep. Okay. We'll take the rest of this into tomorrow. I can continue. We can look over this some more, or would you like, I can copy and paste it in if you guys want to take a copy of it and see what it looks like. You'll have to get it out of the meeting chat though, if you want to do it that way. Yes, no? All right. So I will go ahead and end the recording right now.